live. This is Law Call.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Law Call, where we're going to take your legal questions live on air. Tonight, our topic is eminent domain. We're going to explain that in just a moment. I want to say hello to everybody who's watching on Facebook Live. We actually had a viewer who wanted to listen to us from Arizona tonight. Ray Dean, I hope you're able to watch us. You can watch us at Facebook Live at Perry and Young at our Facebook page. You can watch at WMBB, WDHN simulcasting up in Dothan, Alabama as well. And welcome to all of our viewers tonight. Tonight we're talking about a special topic, eminent domain. We've done nearly 700 shows here, and we're going to be taking your calls live tonight on eminent domain. We're going to define it for you, introduce it to you, find out what it's all about. We've got a special guest in the house tonight. His name is Marcus Green, who happens to be Perry & Young's eminent domain attorney. So welcome, Marcus. How you doing tonight?
Thank you, Larry. Oh, great. Doing great.
Marcus, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, tell us a little bit about your background on eminent domain, and then let's define it for everybody at home.
All right. Yeah, my name's Marcus Green. I work for Perry & Young. I spent 6 years doing eminent domain cases for the Department of Transportation, where we would take private property for a public roadway. What eminent domain is a condemning authority that has the authority to do it, a government or a utility at times, will take private property for public use, but they have to pay just compensation for it.
All right, so let's talk about that a little bit. You said a public entity, like a governmental entity, so that means cities can do it, counties can do it, states can do it, in any of the municipal or any of the roadway or infrastructure projects that they're doing?
Exactly, and public utilities also have the power of eminent domain.
Okay, so let's talk about it here. Folks, I know that you folks in Dothan sometimes will travel down here and you see our roadways are a mess. Let's talk about some of these widening projects. Is that what we're talking about with eminent domain, or is it new roads, or is it just expansion of roads? Tell us what happens, Marcus.
It can be either one. It starts with a study to determine if there's a need for a wider roadway or a new roadway, and then from there they design it and they do the research to figure out what kind of new roadway they need. And then that's when they get into the acquisition, which is the eminent domain or condemnation.
Yep. So folks, when you're out there and you see these big headlines about the government has taken somebody's house, we've seen the little old lady standing in front of her house saying, over my, dead hands, will you take my house, government? Tell us a little bit about the process of eminent domain. You mentioned that there's a study phase. How long does that take? What are some of the things that go on? And ultimately, when does somebody need an attorney, or do they need an attorney when they deal with eminent domain issues? Absolutely.
It's critical to get an eminent domain attorney like us involved as soon as possible, as soon as you think that you may be the target of an eminent domain case. And the reason for that is that while they do have to make you an offer based on an appraisal, that appraisal doesn't necessarily have to include everything that you could be compensated for. They have to make an offer based on what they're actually taking, but they don't have to include in that offer the negative impacts it could have on the remainder of your property.
Gotcha. So it's not an all or nothing proposition sometimes. It can be they take a portion of the property and then it can have a negative impact on the rest of your property. Is that
Absolutely.
Right? So in the rural areas, there's a lot of rural areas in Northwest Florida and also up in Alabama and Georgia. We're going to talk in generic terms, not specific to Florida, but so if somebody, let's say that they're going to widen a road, they're going to make a road a little bit better, add some drainage ditch to it or something along those lines, and somebody gets a notice of a project, what do they do next?
What they should do next is contact an attorney. It's important to get an attorney involved because they're going to put a team together, or a good eminent domain attorney is going to put a team together because the government, whoever's taking your property, not only has to pay you full compensation, they have to pay your attorney, your appraiser, engineers if they're necessary. And whoever's taking your property is responsible for all of those costs. The landowner doesn't have to pay any of that.
All right, so our viewers are they understand what contingency fee means. And they know that you don't pay anything unless you collect. But here, it's a little bit different. It's a contingency fee, but it doesn't come out of the pocket of of the landowner, right?
That's absolutely right.
So tell us how, I mean, you know, so you went through that kind of quickly a little bit. What are some of the things that the law firm or the lawyer would typically do if somebody gets a notice of eminent domain? And, you know, we're going to talk a little bit longer about the process of how long this takes, but at that point in time when they hire a lawyer and the lawyer spends money for, what did you say, an appraiser and what else?
Well, depending on the particular one you're talking about, you may need an engineer, you may need a land planner, you may need a survey done to make sure that everybody knows what's being taken. And if there's a business on the property, there's a good chance you would need a CPA involved.
All right. And so all of those costs typically come out of the person who hires the attorney's funds, but in this case, in eminent domain, that's not the case, is it?
No, that's not the case. What courts have interpreted the Florida Constitution to mean when they say full compensation, that means that those funds can't come out of what's being given for what's being taken.
Got you. So let's give an example. Let's just say, you know, ring, or not ring, the notice comes in the mail from the state of Florida that there's going to be a widening of a highway and they're going to take 10 feet of property. Now 10 feet doesn't sound like much, but depending on the piece of property, it could mean, you know, the rest of it has to go too. But they're going to take 10 feet of the property and they're going to, you know, give $10,000, let's say, for that 10 feet of property. What happens then next? I mean, why, you know, I've got an offer of $10,000 on the table here, Marcus. Are you going to take the money? Are you going to take a fee on that $10,000?
No,
Okay.
That's not the way that the attorney's fees work. The attorney is compensated on the difference between the first written offer to the landowner and what they ultimately settle for. But again, it doesn't come out of that. It's on top of what the landowner gets.
So if you're able to negotiate a price, or you maybe even have to file a lawsuit and you negotiate a price, say, of $20,000, and the landowner gets $20,000, that $10,000, does the person get paid out of that, or does the attorney get paid out of that $10,000, or is that again in addition to what you got for the landowner?
No, the attorney's fee is on top of what goes to the landowner.
Okay.
Every time.
And so if you have to hire a surveyor, that comes from the state as well. In this hypothetical, it comes from the state as well?
Correct, or whoever the condemning
Right.
authority is, yes.
And if there's an engineer, that comes out of, you know, that's an added expense that's added on. And if it's a business, if it's a CPA or some type of certified financial planner that talks about what the value of the business is, or some of the things that are taken from the business, again, that's paid for separate and apart by the condemning authority.
That's correct.
Okay. Wow, that sounds good. Hey, look, our phone lines are open, 850-392-1544, or you can email us at lawcall@wmbb.com. I want to bring up something to you, though. When and how long does this process take for a condemnation to, or eminent domain? It's not really a condemnation, it's a taking. So, and it's a taking by a governmental agency, like you said, or a utility. How long does this process take?
Well, it varies project to project, and it's mostly driven by the funding. And that can come quicker if it's seen as a project of need. For instance, when we have a road widening on a road that's considered to be a hurricane evacuation point, then obviously that gets fast-tracked at times.
Okay. So if somebody is, say, widening a roadway in a rural area, and it's just a rural area roadway that's being widened, that might take a little while.
Yeah, it could, and it's all run by funding.
Okay. So when you say it's run by funding, the condemning authority or the utility has to have the money in hand before they start approaching people? Is that the way that works?
Yes, that's correct. They have to have those funds earmarked before they start negotiating those.
Okay. So how do people know which or who does eminent domain work? I mean, they get a letter in the mail, and, you know, for instance, here in Panama City or Bay County folks, Back Beach Road is being widened to 3 lanes right now. You already see the utility work that's being done. We have a law firm that's on there. One of our offices is on Back Beach Road. We've gotten the letters saying, hey, look, folks, we're coming with a project here. You're going to see the survey crew. You're going to see them working the utilities and the right-of-way and things of that nature. You know, so we've already gotten something from the state, and now we've got a public hearing that's coming up, and you're aware of that as well. But tell us what some of the things are that you go through, some of the processes that you go through, some of the things that the condemning authority has to do by statute or otherwise to keep people informed of what's going on.
Well, typically the first thing that people will get will be a flyer that a project is coming. And as you mentioned, they'll do public hearings that people have a right to go to or to attend. I think that the one you mentioned, they also have an ability to do that one online. But as you're getting closer to the acquisition, they've got to send them a written offer to purchase the land and negotiate with them in good faith to try to do that before they ever file suit to condemn the property.
What happens are, let's say I'm going to be the bad client.
Okay.
I'm going to be the bad client. Or Perry and Young's going to be the bad client. I don't want to sell any of my property. I mean, you know, we had an accident at the intersection where we were, and literally, unfortunately, if the lady had not hit the telephone pole out there, she would have ended up, you know, in our receptionist's lap. I mean, we're already kind of close to that on the roadway. They're planning on taking 50, 75 feet of the nice grassy area that kind of saved our bacon, really, the other day. What happens in that situation? I don't want to sell. I don't want them there. I know that they've got this project going on for miles and miles, but dang it, I just don't want to sell.
Well, there are people that do that, and there are certain circumstances where you can stop it, but all the governmental entity has to show at an order of taking hearing is that the property is necessary for a public purpose, and that the money that they're going to deposit into the clerk's file is based on a valid appraisal. And it's not a very high burden for them to reach. And so while there are times where they've done something wrong where you could fight an order of taking, for the most part, if they want it, they're going to get it.
How many cases has the landowner won where they said, it's just not worth it, you know, you're taking this for no good cause, you know, that you're personally aware of in the state of Florida and surrounding areas?
I have seen that happen, but they've gotten it right the second time.
So what do you mean by that, they got it right the second time?
Where they may have made a mistake somewhere in filing the suit, but they got it corrected the second time they filed it.
All right, so so there's a difference though between eminent domain and condemnation for private projects. You know, so the case that I'm thinking of is the New Jersey case where they were going to build a Pfizer or some type of big pharmaceutical company, and the little old lady standing out there, and she's saying, "I'm not moving from my house," and they end up building the project around her or something along those lines.
Yeah, that's a little different. I mean, that was taken, they called it a public purpose, and the courts in that, for whatever reason, considered it a public purpose, but that was taken and given to a private entity. So yeah, that I've never seen anything like that in Florida, and I can't imagine it would happen in Florida.
So what we're saying here, when the government wants your property, they're going to get it. So folks, you need to demand that you get full and fair compensation. We're going to take a break here in just a moment. We'll be right back in just a few moments. We're talking about eminent domain, a brand new topic. Phone lines are open, the emails are open. We hope to hear from you. We'll be back in just a few moments. Good evening and welcome back to Law Call, where we're taking your questions live on air. 850-392-1544 is the number. You can also email us at lawcall@wmbb.com. We've got an email question already and we've got a live caller. So let's take Robert from Holmes County.
Hello, how you doing?
Question you got for us tonight?
Yes, I'm curious, in the state of Florida, is if it's legal for government to take private property and turn around and sell it by eminent domain, obviously, and turn around and sell that to another private industry.
So were you able to catch that? It was a little light here. I'll repeat it for everybody's benefit. Let's see here. Robert was asking whether or not it was legal to take property by eminent domain and then turn around and sell that property to a private company.
Well, I'd need to know a little bit more of the facts of that.
Okay.
There are circumstances where they've acquired more than they need and it's surplus property, and after a period of time then they can sell that to somebody else. But that's the only way that I know of that where a condemning authority has sold to another private person. And even in those circumstances they have to offer it back to the other person first. So I'm not sure exactly what Robert's talking about. I'd need to know more of the facts that he's dealing with.
Sometimes also in our areas we've got a lot of creeks. We've got Econfina Creek and things of that nature, and there's a watershed issue. And so the condemning authority it's the state of Florida through one of their governmental agencies. I remember when Econfina Creek, when they expanded that water basin, there was a lot of property that was sold back to the state of Florida or one of their government agencies. That was probably 20-25 years ago. Actually, right after I first got down here, probably in the late 1990s. Mm-hmm. Is there a situation though where they could buy too much and then turn around and sell it back to adjoining landowners, or like you said, they have to, what's the process on that? If they take too much land, they say, all right, well, we need 100 acres for the watershed, and then after they go through and finish everything up and they compensate the folks for 100 acres, and then they say, well, these 20 acres we don't need. What happens in that situation? Well, and how long would it take? Just as a hypothetical. We don't know.
I've never been directly involved in that side of it, but my understanding of it is that they would first have to, if it's within a certain amount of time, they would first have to offer it back to the person they had taken it from.
Okay. All right. And then if
they weren't interested, then they could sell it to whomever.
Yeah, and let's say 10 years had gone by, and that's usually beyond all time limits. Does the state then, since they own the property, they can turn around and sell it to anybody they want to?
Yeah, I mean they have a surplus property, a way of getting rid of surplus property that way.
Okay, well, good to know. Robert, hope that helps you out, and at least get you started on the path. If you have something more detailed and you want to talk with us, give us a call at the law firm and we'll be more than happy to talk with you. We've got an email question. Let's go to that. Let's see, we don't know. Let's see, who is this from?
Sandra.
Yeah. There we go. It's from Sandra. Sandra asked, what is just compensation? I have a piece of land that has increased in value every year. I have no plans to sell it because it has been in my family for generations, and I know it will be worth much, much more in the future. So why should I accept the value of in 2023 for something instead of holding on to it for 10 or 20 more years and getting that value? This makes me mad. And she put it in all caps. Yeah, there it is. All caps and an exclamation point, Sandra. And, honestly, it kind of makes me mad too. Property that's been in for generations and generations, what do you do about that situation? I mean, do you say, all right, well, Sandra, the property's going to be worth, with inflation and everything going well, 50 years from now, it's going to be worth X, or do you have to value it for 2023?
Well, it has to be valued at the date of taking. Well, if Sandra didn't agree to some kind of purchase agreement with them and it went to an order of taking hearing, the date of value would be the date of taking. But that doesn't mean that Sandra has to accept what they say is just compensation is just compensation. Sandra should absolutely hire an eminent domain attorney and get her own appraiser, and if necessary, other experts involved in determining what the right value of that property is.
So, with generational land and under current tax laws, there's what's called a step up in basis, meaning if I own an acre of land and I die, there's a step up in basis to the people that I give it to, and then after they die, then there's a step up in basis they give it to. So if I had paid $10 for an acre of land, and look, you look at Bay County and the prices here, the Red Diamond Tea Corporation developed Laguna Beach, and they were selling lots at $50 a month and $50 down, and pay it off in a few years. And so just, 50, 60 years ago, I guess a little bit longer than that, but, maybe 50, 60 years ago, on Panama City Beach, lots that are now going for $1 million were being sold for, $3,000 and $4,000. So how is it then with Sandra, would the evaluation take place since it's generational land? Does it make a difference that it's generational land? Or is it, because the value, there's at least, it sounds like even maybe a sentimental value to Sandra?
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of people have sentimental values attached to their land, especially in situations like that, or a business that they built themselves and have that sweat equity into it that just didn't recognize by an appraisal. So the way an appraiser is going to approach that is no, they're not going to give more value to it. But eminent domain, if you go all the way to trial, you've got a right to a jury trial. Would a jury give more value to it? Maybe.
Right.
Certainly people around here may think that way.
Yeah. So there are jury trials in eminent domain cases.
Absolutely.
And see, that's something I didn't know. So talk to me about that a little bit. Sandra, first of all, I hope that helps you out. If you have any additional questions, again, we need to maybe get some more information about that, but we'll be more than happy to talk with you during the week. But let's talk about that. You have a right to a jury trial on this? It's not just a matter of negotiations going back and forth? Oh,
absolutely. That's a constitutional right that you've got. And it's a 12-person jury, not the 6-person that we see a lot of times. The way a eminent domain case works is it's a two-step process. The first is a judge decision whether the condemning authority has met their burdens of showing that it's for a public purpose and that their deposit is based on a valid appraisal.
Okay.
Once they've deposited that, you're still negotiating with them on what the final compensation will be. And if you don't reach an agreement, then yes, it goes to a jury trial in front of 12 jurors.
On the issue of valuation.
Exactly.
Not on the value. So a judge is going to make the decision as to whether or not it is a valid taking, and that's it. And then it's a jury's determination to determine what the value of the land is.
That's exactly right.
Okay, excellent. Ralph, I think we've got Ralph on the phone from Walton County. All right, Ralph, what's your question tonight, buddy?
I have a home business, and the state plans to widen the highway and take 40 foot of my highway frontage. And I have just under 1 acre, and I use every inch of it for business, shipping, receiving, inventory, processing, and so forth. But I was told that the state gets paid. The state would pay my lawyer for the business by the home, what they recoup for the home, but that I have to pay 10% to the lawyer of what they recoup for the business. And I show that the state would pay the lawyer for all of it. So I'm just trying to clarify.
Yes, sir. So, Ralph, just for everybody, you put it in summary, you have a home, which is homestead, but you also have a home-based business there on a 1 acre land on a state widening of a highway over in Walton County, and you wanted some clarification here about, business loss. Okay. Does the state of Florida pay for the business loss, the lawyer on the business loss as well?
Yes, the state of Florida will pay for the business loss if it meets certain qualifications.
Okay.
Business damages aren't a constitutional right in the state of Florida like land damages are. They're statutory created. And so I don't know what kind of deal he's made with an attorney, but it may include part of his business damages going to them. That's what it sounds like. And it could be because there's a little bit of risk in taking that. I'm not sure. Again, I'd have to know a little bit more about Ralph's situation.
Yeah, so Ralph, what we probably need to do is get greater detail after we're not going to call tonight after the show. We'll give you a call tomorrow to get some of that additional information. It's not sounding quite right to Marcus and I, but there may be some variation in that. But the reality of it is the way that we present things is that there's no fee that comes out of your pocket. It's all from the state of Florida in cases involving the state of Florida. Folks, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back for the third and final block here on Law Call. Stay tuned. I hope this has been an informative night for you, and we look forward to you staying tuned for just a few more minutes. We'll be right back. And welcome back to our final segment here tonight on Law Call. Look, we've kind of covered a lot of new topic and new ground. It's like going to law school again and learning something new. You know, Marcus, you know, you've been in the field for 6 years, 7 years, and you know, we appreciate what you're doing. Glad you came on with us to do this. Now, you can do this all across the state, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about that. You know, how do you find out about projects across the state? Yeah, I've only got a minute. They told me so. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, we look at condemning authorities that we know do a lot of projects, and we look at their upcoming projects and look at what's coming and try to get as much information on those projects as we can, so that when a client comes to us, we're informed and ready to talk to them.
Yeah. Hey, we've got some shout outs. I got some special photographs here tonight. Let's take a look at that first one. Look at that family. Look at there. So to commemorate your first time on there, give your shout out to your wife there and everybody in your family watching.
All right. Yeah, Marley, John Ross, y'all should be in bed. And Leah, I love you. I'll be home soon.
All right, here we go. It's scholarship season. The Perry and Young Foundation scholarships are being given out. This is a recipient from Bozeman High School. I think we've got a recipient from South Walton High School. The Perry and Young Foundation scholarship is approaching over $100,000 of scholarship awards. It's been in existence for several years now to deserving high school students, graduating seniors here in the Panhandle. So let's go to the next slide real fast. Oh, there's Johnny Jobert and wife Amy. Treated us to a lunch with Larry all the way over at Mansour's in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Johnny and Amy, there's our beautiful wives. And guys, we outpunted our coverage. You and I both did, and so did Mr. Jobert. And of course, Mr. Hank, handsome Hank, is watching guard. He's at home tonight. Thank you all for watching. We appreciate you very much. Stay tuned. Next week, we'll be back at the same time, same place, here for Law Call, where we can take your legal questions live on the air. Thank you again, everybody, and good night.